Yielding. As I think we all know, this is a long and complicated bill. An important part of this bill deals with illegal immigration. How do we make sure that we stop the flow of illegal immigrants in this country? How do we finally begin to deal with employers who are knowingly hiring illegal immigrants? What do you do with 12 million people who are in this country who, in my view, we are not going to simply in the middle of the night throw out of this country? Difficult and important issues, and on those issues I am in general agreement with the thrust of this legislation. But, Mr. President, I want to tell you that there are areas in this bill where I have strong disagreements, and that is the issue of legal immigration. What we are doing in terms of bringing people into this country who, in my view, will end up lowering wages for American workers right now. Senator Kennedy a moment ago made a very important point. He talked about the truth that in our country today we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. That's a national disgrace. But on top of that, we have the highest rate of poverty of any major country on earth. In fact, since President Bush has been in office, 5 million more Americans have slipped into poverty. Today in our country, as many people know, the middle class is shrinking. Millions of American workers are working longer hours for lower wages. In my state of Vermont, it is not uncommon for people to work 2 jobs, even 3 jobs, just to make enough income to pay their bills. According to a recent Pew Brookings Institute study, men in their 30s earned on average 12% less in 2004 than their fathers did in 1974 after adjusting for inflation. In other words, in America, we're moving in the wrong direction. Our standard of living in many ways is going down. And if we don't reverse trends, our kids will have a lower standard of living than we are. Now, in the midst of all of that, we are finding many, many large corporations, both those who employ skilled workers, professional workers, and those who employ low-wage workers. They're coming to this body and they're saying, my goodness, yes, we are outsourcing millions of decent-paying jobs. Yes, we have opposed vigorously raising the minimum wage. Yes, we have done everything that we can to make sure that workers can't form unions. But what we want to do now, because we love the American people so much and we're so concerned about the American worker, what we want to do now is bring millions of new workers into this country, both low-wage workers and both professional workers. And the argument there, Mr. President, is Americans don't want to do the work. We just can't find American workers to do the work. Mr. President, that is a crock in many instances. It's just not true. Now, one of the groups that has come into Congress to tell us how much they are concerned about the need to find workers, because they just can't find Americans to do the job, is our old friends at Walmart. Now, I think as many Americans know, Walmart pays low wages. They often hire people for 30 hours a week rather than 40 hours a week. They're providing minimal health care benefits. And Walmart has come in and said, well, we just can't find the workers. Bring us in more low-wage workers. Well, guess what? 2 years ago, when Walmart announced the opening of a new store in Oakland, California, Mr. President, do you know how many people showed up for that job in Oakland, California at a Walmart? 11,000 people showed up. 11,000 people showed up in Oakland, filled out applications for a job when only 400 jobs were available. 11,000 people for 400 jobs. Walmart says they just need more low-wage workers coming in from around the world. They can't find the worker. Well, that was a couple of years ago. You might say, well, doesn't happen today. Mr. President, in January of 2006, when Walmart announced the opening of a store in Evergreen Park just outside of Chicago. In your home state, Mr. President, 24,500 people applied for 325 jobs. And Walmart and their friends are coming in here saying, we can't find Americans who want to work. And let's be clear, Walmart does not provide good wages, do not provide good benefits, do not provide good health care, and yet they're finding many, many people who want to do that because people in this country are desperate, because people in this country want to work at almost any job. Mr. President, some of the people at the other end of the economic spectrum, the people who are hiring professionals, they make the same argument. There are organizations out there, including companies like Motorola, Dell, IBM, Microsoft, Intel, Boeing. They say the same thing. We can't find professionals to do the jobs. Now, I find it interesting, Mr. President, that while these companies claim that they can't find workers in the United States of America, some of these very same companies have recently announced major layoffs of thousands of American workers. Let me repeat that. These companies are saying we desperately need to bring workers from other countries into America. We can't find people in the United States to do these skilled jobs, and at the same time, they are laying off tens of thousands of American workers. Let me give you just a few examples. Just a few days ago, the Los Angeles Times reported that Dell would be eliminating 10% of its workforce, slashing 8,800 jobs. Dell is part of the group saying we need to bring in more professionals into America. Meanwhile, as Dell has eliminated decent-paying jobs in the U.S., it applied for nearly 400 H-1B visas last year. But Dell is not alone. On May 31st, the Financial Times reported that Motorola would be cutting 4,000 jobs on top of an earlier 3,500 job reduction designed to generate savings of some $400 million. This is nothing new. Motorola has cut jobs in this country year after year after year. But guess what? Motorola, part of a group saying they can't find American workers, recently received 760 H-1B visas. That was last year. May 30th, Reuters reported that IBM will be laying off more than 1,500 American workers, bringing total layoffs to that company to 3,700 last year. In April, CBS MarketWatch reported that Citigroup announced that it would be laying off 17,000 workers, and yet Citigroup received over 330 H-1B visas. Here's the point. This is not a complicated point. Many of the largest corporations in this country are supporting this legislation. And you know why, Mr. President? It's not because they're staying up nights worrying about some Mexican kid in Detroit or in Chicago and what will be the future of that kid. They're not worried about that. What they want to see is a continued influx into this country of cheap labor. They're not content with outsourcing millions of good-paying jobs. They're not content with fighting against working people who want to form unions. They're not content with their opposition, successful until recently, of keeping the minimum wage at $5.15 an hour for 10 years. That is not good enough. Now what they are trying to do, they're saying here, gee, we can't move Walmart in America to China. We can't move hotels to China. We can't move restaurants to China. What's the best way to continue keeping wages low for those workers? Well, you know what? When I was a kid, I worked in a hotel. I was a busboy. Nothing wrong with that job. Millions of people do that job. I resent very much the fact that many of these large corporations are continuing their war against the middle class and against the American worker. So, Mr. President, I think it's high time that the Senate of the United States of America began to stand up for the American worker. rather than the large multinational corporations who have so much sway over what we do in this body. And I would hope that before an immigration bill is passed, that it will respect the rights of American workers, both low-wage workers and both professional workers, and say that that is our major responsibility, to make sure that our kids...
For a question?
I would be happy to...
The senator's time has expired.
Well, I would ask for unanimous consent for one additional minute to yield to my friend.
Without objection. Senator from South Carolina. Oh, Alabama, excuse me.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
My question, I guess, would be something like this. Perhaps it could be true that the large number of applications at Walmart facilities could be because even though Walmart does not pay great wages, they have health care, benefits, and job security compared to construction work. And I guess if much of the businesses involved in those kind of activities, would the senator think if they raised wages at the construction site, they had jobs that have a permanent status, a more permanent status to them, and actually had retirement and health care benefits, that they might get more people willing to work at the construction
Reclaiming
site?
my time, if I might. The senator makes an important point, and that is we have all been educated that economics is about supply and demand. If you don't get the workers you want, you raise wages and you raise benefits. You don't simply open the door and bring in other workers at low wages. The senator makes an important point. I thank the President.
The senator's time has expired. Senator from New Mexico.